What's up, everyone? It's Emily Kaplan with ESPN, and a fairly massive trade just went down in the NHL. Anthony Mantha goes from the Washington Capitals to the Vegas Golden Knights for a second and a fourth round pick. It's Tuesday night, the trade just went down, so I'm going to give you my initial thoughts, and this is going to be a bit of a stream of consciousness here. Let's begin with the Vegas Golden Knights, though. They're the defending Stanley Cup champions. And literally the day after they won last year, their front office begins plotting ways for them to win another championship. Does that sound insane? Of course, but that's just the DNA or the MO of this organization. They are highly competitive and highly aggressive. They go after all the big free agents, and at this time of year, the trade deadline, they're always active. If you look back at their short history, the amount of impact players that have played such a crucial role in the fabric of the organization is kind of insane that they've collected this time of year. I mean, their captain, Mark Stone, Chandler Stevenson, Robin Lehner. Last year, they go and get Ivan Barbashev, who's such an important secondary scorer on that cup run, and Jonathan Quick, their backup goalie. So I almost could have guaranteed it to you that they were going to be active at this time of year, especially because they brought back essentially the entire same team that won the Stanley Cup, minus Riley Smith and Jonathan Quick. Plus, they get off to a really good start. And then all of a sudden, they're fortified by cap space and a need. And that's because their captain, Mark Stone, for the second straight year, goes on long-term injury reserved right around this time. Now, if a player's on LTIR, that means that you can spend their cap space as long as they're off, and then when they come back, you have to meet the salary cap requirements. But all of that becomes moot in the playoffs. And last year, Mark Stone goes off because he gets back surgery. And then all of a sudden, it's day one of the playoffs, and lo and behold, he's back there on the ice. And so many teams took umbrage to that, and they're like, whoa, this seems sketchy. So one team I know filed a complaint to the NHL. The league looked into it, and I am told was pretty thorough, prodding around, trying to figure out what was going on. And the league found nothing sketchy or uncouth about the timeline there. So the Vegas Golden Knights went unpunished, and we know that Mark Stone was an impact player for them as they won the Stanley Cup. And it's really uncanny that it's happened for the second straight year. Here's what I can tell you. This injury does seem a lot more serious than last year. It's not related to his back. It actually involves his spleen. And they have ruled him out for the rest of the regular season. And I'm also told that it seems like a even question if he can be available for the first round of the playoffs or beyond that. So I know teams and fans are rolling their eyes again, but wouldn't you rather have Mark Stone, your captain, out there than his cap space to spend? So that's the situation the Golden Knights are in, but we knew they were going to spend it, and that's where we enter Anthony Mantha, the player at hand here. He also plays on the wing, and he's a scoring winger. At his best, he's a big, powerful presence that has some pretty good hands for being such a power forward and a big guy. But that's the thing, at his best. And as I talk about it from Washington's perspective, unfortunately, they saw a glimpse of it, specifically this year, where he really found his game under new coach Spencer Carberry, 20 goals in 56 games. But there just wasn't the consistency that they would have liked, and that's why it didn't work out for him in Washington. All of that said, I think he gets into this Vegas Golden Knights locker room, and there's so many veterans there, and there's such a high standard and a culture of winning. It's going to bring out the absolute best in Anthony Mantha. And that's why I think this is a slam dunk trade. Even better for the Golden Knights is that Washington is retaining 50% of his salary. That means they're only spending $2.85 million prorated for him on the rest of the year. And that means that they can go out and be more active at the trade deadline, which we know they love to do. And I would expect them to add another player, specifically a forward. Now, they were one of the teams in on Jake Guentzel, who is widely the top forward available this year. Just such a gamer when it comes to the playoffs. So much skill, so much history, and he's going to be at the top of his game. I don't know if this necessarily precludes Vegas from getting Jake Guentzel still, but I don't think they're the front runners anymore, especially because Pittsburgh has such a high asking price, and Vegas is probably not afraid to pay it because we know they put all their chips in and gamble on their future. Sorry, it's like this far into the video. I'm allowed like one Vegas pun, but we shall see. So I don't think Vegas is done yet, but what they have now is an absolute banger of a pick. Okay, now let's talk about the Washington Capitals. And if you're a Caps fan, I would completely understand if you were a bit dejected or frustrated right now. Because your team is right there in the mix, in the hunt for a playoff spot after a really good stretch of wins last week. And now it looks like you're about to be sellers for the second year in a row. And this fan base and this team has become accustomed to playoff berths. It's just the standard that was set in the Alex Ovechkin era. And now it feels like we're entering a new era. So I talked to their general manager, Brian McClellan, a few weeks ago, and he gave me the big worldview on where the Caps stand right now. And he basically said, my job is to balance doing right by our legacy players with also staying competitive and getting younger. Those legacy players, it's so complicated because chiefly it's Alex Ovechkin, but right now it's also TJ Oshie and John Carlson. They won the franchise their only Stanley Cup. So many ways they're indebted to them, and they want to see their careers out the right way. Also, they're financially committed to them for the next several years. That said, the depth around them is completely depleted. They traded draft picks and prospects for that Stanley Cup, and now it's starting to catch up with them. But doing right by the legacy players is an extra layer for Alex Ovechkin because the organization has put so much energy and focus into getting him the all-time goals record, surpassing Wayne Gretzky. And so they need to make sure that he's got a pretty good, decent team around him, but that feels like the big focus for this organization over the next few years. So they're in this kind of transition mode. Anthony Mantha came to this team they were in a different place. They gave up a ton for him. Jacob Vrana, a first-round pick, a third-round pick. He was part of Detroit's core. It was shocking when Detroit got rid of him because they're like, wait, hold up. Wasn't he supposed to be with Dylan Larkin and Tyler Bertuzzi? And weren't they going to usher this team past their playoff drought? But now Dylan Larkin's the only one of that trio there. So Anthony Mantha comes to Washington, and the team starts to hit a decline, and he just never really finds his game. When he's engaged and when he's at his best, he's so tantalizing as a player. You're like, this kid has it all. He's got the power. He's got the physical aspects, and he also has the hands. Like, he can score. But there were so many games where he just wasn't engaged enough. And under the previous coach, Peter Laviolette did end up in the doghouse a few times. Again, he found his way this year under Spencer Carberry. But at this time, it's just a season lost for the Washington Capitals. They're down their top two centers, two of those legacy players that Brian McClellan talked about that are now transitioning out of the organization. Nicholas Backstrom, who just gave all that he had to hockey. His body gave out on him. He had to step away this year. And Evgeny Kuznetsov, who ups and downs as well. They've been exploring a trade for him. He had to enter the player assistance program, and when he exited, they decided it's probably time for a fresh start for both the player and the organization. So he's down in the minors until they figure that out. And the rest of the team, even though they see some sparks of promise, I think they're going to use the rest of this regular season to give what they do have in these young players and prospects down in Hershey. And the Hershey team's doing very well. There's a lot of great individual performances there. They want to make sure these guys are getting NHL reps, getting acclimated, and that's the focus for the end of this year. So you can probably compare what they gave up for Anthony Mantha to what they had to give away. It's also, let's remember, he's an expiring UFA, so he was going to walk away for nothing this summer. That'll help explain some of the lower returns. And then the rest of the season for the Capitals is all going to be about that transition to the future. So I don't think Anthony Mantha is the only player to get traded away from the Capitals. Nick Dowd, he has one additional year on his contract. He's an absolute coach's dream, does everything defensively, is just a fourth-line center, but hopefully should recoup some decent prospects for the Capitals. Joel Edmondson has been getting a lot of interest too. There's a chance that someone takes a flyer, or not a flyer, really gets to benefit from one of Washington's two goalies, specifically Charlie Lindgren, who's completely outplayed expectations. And there's a couple other guys that could be on the trade block too. So Washington will be a team to watch over these next few days. Keep it locked here on the ESPN YouTube channel. I'll be providing videos like this with all of my initial thoughts. And if you made it this far, congrats on the Emily Kaplan Stream of Consciousness.